The wind howled across the frozen plains of Meridian 7 like a living creature, battering the small research outpost with relentless fury. Dr. Natasha. Corvin pressed her palm against the triple-layered window, feeling the vibrations of the storm through the reinforced glass. She had been alone here for 4 months, studying the planet's unique crystalline formations and their potential for energy storage. Solitude had become her companion, and she had grown comfortable with the silence broken only by the whistle of alien winds. A streak of fire tore across the purple-tinted sky, distinctly different from the lightning that occasionally lit the storm clouds. Natasha's heart jumped as she tracked the burning object's trajectory. It was falling fast, leaving a trail of sparks and debris. The impact shook the ground beneath her feet, and without thinking, she was already reaching for her emergency supply pack. Years of training as both a xenobiologist and emergency responder kicked in automatically. Someone or something needed help. The journey through the blizzard tested every ounce of her determination. Ice crystals stung her face despite the protective gear, and the wind threatened to knock her off her feet with each step. But Natasha had always been stubborn, a trait her mother said she inherited from her grandmother. She would not leave anyone to die in this frozen wasteland, human or otherwise. The crash site was a scar of melted ice and twisted metal. The ship was unlike anything in the Federation databases she had studied. Its hull was a deep midnight blue that seemed to shimmer even in the dim storm light, covered in symbols that glowed with a soft golden luminescence. Part of the vessel had crumpled on impact, and she could see movement through a cracked viewport. Someone was alive inside. Using her plasma torch, Natasha carefully cut through the damaged hull plating. Steam and strange-smelling vapors poured out, carrying hints of something like jasmine mixed with ozone. Inside, strapped to what appeared to be a command chair, was a figure that made her breath catch in her throat. He was humanoid but distinctly alien. His skin had a faint iridescent quality, shifting between pale silver and soft blue depending on how the light struck it. Dark hair fell across his face, and when his eyes opened, they were a striking amber color that seemed to glow from within. Blood seeped from a wound on his temple, and his breathing was labored. Their eyes met, and despite the obvious differences between them, Natasha saw something utterly familiar in his expression. Pain, yes, but also hope and an unexpected gentleness. He tried to speak, his voice melodic but the words incomprehensible. She did not need translation to understand he was asking for help. Getting him out of the wreckage proved challenging. He was taller than she expected and heavier, though his body felt surprisingly warm against her even through her protective suit. As she half carried, half dragged him through the storm, she noticed his hand had found hers, gripping it with surprising strength. There was something protective in that gesture, even in his weakened state, that made her heart beat faster. By the time they reached her outpost, he had lost consciousness. But his fingers remained intertwined with hers, and Natasha found herself reluctant to break that connection even as she worked to get him inside to safety. The unexpected gift, the medical bay of Natasha's research station, was small but well equipped. She worked through the night, her hands steady despite her racing thoughts as she tended to the mysterious pilot. Her scanner readings showed a physiology that was similar enough to human to understand, but fascinatingly different. His cardiovascular system had additional chambers, and his cellular regeneration rate was remarkable. The head wound that had seemed so serious was already beginning to heal, the edges knitting together with visible speed. She cleaned the injury with gentle care, noting how his skin felt almost electric under her fingertips, warm and smooth with a subtle texture like finest silk. When dawn broke across Meridian 7's frozen horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, his amber eyes opened and focused on her face with startling clarity. He spoke, and this time her translation device caught fragments of meaning. The word came through accented but clear. Grateful, you. Saved me. His voice was deeper than she expected, resonating in a way that made her feel the words as much as hear them. You were injured, Natasha replied simply, checking his vital signs on her monitor. I couldn't leave you out there. She watched as he processed her words, his expression thoughtful and intense in a way that made her acutely aware of how close she was standing to him. I am Arachin, he said, placing a hand over his chest in what seemed to be a gesture of introduction. Of the Celestial Navigators. My ship. He tried to sit up, then winced, falling back against the medical bed. The cargo. I was carrying something precious. I must retrieve it. Natasha placed a hand on his shoulder, gently but firmly keeping him down. You're in no condition to go anywhere. Whatever it is, the storm is still too dangerous. Tell me what you need, and I'll go look. Arachin stared at her for a long moment, and she saw conflict play across his features. Trust did not come easily, she understood that. They were strangers from different worlds, different species. But something in his eyes softened, and he nodded slowly. In the rear compartment, he said quietly, a stasis pod. Small blue crystal casing. Please, it is a life. An innocent life. Natasha felt her stomach tighten. A life. She was back in her thermal suit before Arachin could say another word, fighting her way through the dying storm to the crash site. The ship's rear section had broken away during impact, and she found it partially buried in a snowdrift. The blue crystal pod was exactly where Arachin said it would be, still glowing with internal light. She carried it back with extreme care, her mind racing with questions. Inside the safety of her outpost, she placed the pod on her lab table and activated the transparency function. What she saw made her gasp. Inside was an infant, no larger than a human newborn, with the same iridescent skin as Arachin and tiny features that were heartbreakingly delicate. The baby was in deep stasis, peaceful and perfect. Is she safe? Ren's voice came from the doorway. He had somehow made it out of the medical bay, leaning heavily against the wall, but his eyes fixed on the pod with desperate intensity. She? Natasha whispered. My niece, Arachin said, and there was such pain and love in his voice that Natasha felt tears prick her eyes. Her name is Senna. I was taking her to sanctuary. Her parents. There was an attack. I am all she has left. Natasha looked from the tiny sleeping child to the wounded alien who had crossed space to protect her. Without hesitation, she made her decision. Then we'll keep her safe together. Both of you. I have supplies, equipment. We'll figure this out. The gratitude in Ren's eyes was profound, and when he reached for her hand, she took it without hesitation. The next 3 days transformed Natasha's solitary outpost into something resembling a home. She carefully brought Senna out of stasis, and the infant's first cries filled the research station with unexpected life. Ren's knowledge combined with Natasha's scientific training created a workable care routine. The baby needed specialized nutrients, which they synthesized from the ship's remaining supplies and Natasha's laboratory resources. Watching Arachin hold his niece was something that touched Natasha's heart in ways she had not anticipated. His large hands were so gentle, cradling the tiny child against his chest while humming melodies from his homeworld. Senna would calm instantly at the sound of his voice, her small fingers gripping his thumb with surprising strength. And when Natasha took her turn holding the baby, feeling that warm weight against her shoulder, she understood why people spoke of love at first sight. Arachin recovered quickly, his enhanced physiology healing the worst of his injuries within days. He moved through the station with growing confidence, learning her equipment and offering his own knowledge in return. They fell into an easy rhythm, sharing meals and conversation, their words becoming more natural as the translation device adapted to Ren's language patterns. On my world, Arichin said one evening as they sat together watching Senna sleep in her improvised crib. We believe that those who save a life become bound to it, not as obligation, but as honor. You saved both of us, Natasha. That makes you family by our oldest traditions. Natasha felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. I like that tradition, she said softly. Their shoulders were touching as they sat side by side, and she was intensely aware of every point of contact, but their peaceful interlude shattered on the fourth day when her long-range sensors detected 3 ships entering Meridian 7's orbit. Ren's expression turned grim as he examined the readings. They found us, he said quietly. The same faction that attacked Senna's parents. They want her because of her bloodline. She is heir to knowledge they wish to possess. Then they can't have her, Natasha said firmly, her protective instincts flaring bright and fierce. She began calculating options, running scenarios through her mind with the same focused intensity she applied to her research. Arichin looked at her with something like wonder. You would stand against them? For a child not of your species? For people you barely know? Natasha met his amber gaze steadily. I would stand against anyone who threatens my family. And you just told me that's what we are now. The weight of that declaration hung in the air between them. Meaning layered upon meaning. They worked together to fortify the station, using every bit of technology at their disposal. Ren's knowledge of defensive systems, combined with Natasha's understanding of the planet's unique properties, created unexpected solutions. They rigged the crystalline formations around the outpost to generate interference fields, making precise targeting impossible. They established hidden supply caches in case they needed to evacuate. During one late-night planning session, exhaustion and fear finally caught up with them. Natasha found herself leaning against Ren's shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. His arm came around her, pulling her closer, and she did not resist. I am sorry, he murmured into her hair. Sorry that I brought this danger to your door. You brought more than danger, Natasha replied, tilting her head to look up at him. You brought purpose, connection, you brought Senna. She hesitated, then added quietly, you brought yourself. The distance between them disappeared slowly, giving both time to pull away. But neither did. When Ren's lips met hers, it felt like the most natural thing in the universe, despite everything that made them different. His hand cupped her face with exquisite gentleness, and Natasha felt something fundamental shift inside her heart. Hearts across the cosmos. The threat hanging over them should have made everything more difficult, but instead it seemed to strip away pretense and hesitation. Over the following days, as they prepared for the inevitable confrontation, Natasha and Arichin grew closer in ways that transcended mere partnership. There were stolen moments between planning sessions, quiet conversations in the deep of night while taking turns watching over Senna, touches that lingered and meant more than words could express. Arichin taught her phrases in his language, and the way his eyes lit up when she managed the complex pronunciations made her heart flutter. She showed him earth music, and they danced slowly in the common area while Senna watched from her crib with wide, curious eyes. Different worlds, different species, but the emotion growing between them needed no translation. Tell me about your home, Natasha asked one evening as they sat together, her head resting against his chest, listening to the dual rhythm of his hearts. Outside, the aurora of Meridian 7 painted the sky in brilliant greens and blues. Ren's voice rumbled pleasantly beneath her ear as he spoke. It is a world of great oceans and floating cities. We build with crystal and light, structures that sing in the wind. My family has been navigators for generations, traveling the stars, making connections between distant peoples. His arms tightened around her. But I have never felt more at home than I do here, now, with you. Natasha turned in his embrace, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw. His skin was warmer than human, and she loved the way it seemed to glow faintly in low light. When this is over, when Senna is safe, what happens then? Will you leave? That depends, Arichin said softly, his amber eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. On whether you would want us to stay, or ... He paused, seeming to gather courage. Whether you might consider coming with us. My people would welcome you. Senna already loves you as a second parent. And I? He cupped her face in both hands. I have fallen for you, Natasha Corvin. Completely and irrevocably. The thought of leaving you behind is unbearable. Tears filled Natasha's eyes, but they were happy ones. I love you too, she whispered. Both of you. This makeshift family we've created, it's the most real thing I've ever known. Their kiss was deeper this time, passionate and tender all at once. Archon lifted her easily, carrying her to her quarters, and they spent the night learning each other's bodies with patient care. Every touch was a conversation, every sigh a promise. Despite their physiological differences, they fit together perfectly, finding rhythm and pleasure in the simple act of being close. The next morning they woke tangled together, and Arachon pressed kisses to her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Whatever comes, he murmured against her skin, we face it together. No more alone. Together, Natasha agreed, sealing the vow with another kiss, but their bubble of happiness could not last forever. The ships in orbit had deployed scanning drones, searching for traces of Wren's vessel. It was only a matter of time before they pinpointed the crash site and subsequently the outpost. They needed a plan that went beyond simply hiding. Natasha studied the data with fresh eyes, an idea forming. The crystalline formations, she said slowly, they don't just store energy. They can amplify and redirect it. If we could overload them at the right moment, create a massive pulse, it would disable any ships in low orbit, Arichin finished, catching her meaning immediately. But the feedback could destroy your research station. Everything you've built here. Natasha looked at Senna, sleeping peacefully in her crib, then at Arichin, the man she had never expected to find and now could not imagine living without. Things can be rebuilt, she said firmly. People, the ones we love, they can't. We do whatever it takes. A future together, the landing party arrived during the early hours of dawn. 3 figures in powered armor descended from a dropship, their weapons obvious even from a distance. Natasha and Archon had moved Senna to the underground storage bunker, the safest location in the outpost. The baby was secure in her stasis pod once more, a temporary measure to keep her protected from what was to come. Arichin wanted to face them alone, to surrender himself in exchange for their safety. But Natasha refused absolutely. They had become partners in every sense that mattered, and she would not let him sacrifice himself. Instead, they had a different plan, one that relied on timing, courage, and the unique properties of Meridian 7 itself. Natasha activated the external comm system as the armed figures approached. This is Dr. Natasha Corvin, authorized Federation researcher. You are trespassing on protected scientific territory. State your business. The lead figure's voice crackled through, cold and mechanical. We seek the celestial navigator Arichin and his cargo. Surrender them, and you will not be harmed. The Federation doesn't negotiate with armed invaders, Natasha replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Beside her, Arichin prepared the crystal array, his fingers flying over the controls they had rigged together. The response was predictable. Energy weapons powered up, targeting the outpost. But Natasha had counted on their aggression. The moment the first shot fired, she triggered the sequence. The crystalline formations around the outpost lit up like captured stars, absorbing the weapon's energy and magnifying it 1,000-fold. The pulse that erupted was spectacular and devastating. It swept across the area in a wave of brilliant light, overloading the invaders' armor systems and sending feedback up to their ships in orbit. Alarms blared as the vessel's systems crashed, leaving them dead in space. The landing party collapsed, their powered suits now inert metal coffins. Though Natasha's readings confirmed they were alive inside, just immobilized, the outpost shook violently, systems failing as the energy backlash took its toll. Arichin grabbed Natasha's hand, and together they ran for the bunker. Behind them, the research station that had been her home for months began to collapse, but she did not look back. Everything that truly mattered was ahead of her in the bunker. They retrieved Senna and activated the emergency beacon that would bring Federation ships to investigate. The unconscious invaders would be taken into custody, and the threat would be contained. But more importantly, they were all alive and together. Days later, a Federation response team arrived along with representatives from Ren's people. The Celestial Navigators were grateful beyond words for Senna's safety and impressed by the courage both Natasha and Arichin had shown. They offered Natasha a position unlike any she had dreamed of, the chance to be a liaison between humanity and their civilization, to help build bridges between species and share knowledge across the stars. Standing on the landing pad with Senna in her arms and Arichin at her side, Natasha looked up at the ship that would carry them to their new life. She had come to Meridian 7 seeking solitude and scientific discovery. Instead, she had found family, love, and purpose that reached far beyond anything she had imagined. "Ready?" Arichin asked, his hand warm in hers. Natasha looked at the baby, who gurgled happily, then at the man who had crash-landed into her life and changed everything. "More than ready," she said, smiling. "Let's go home." As their ship lifted off, leaving the frozen plains of Meridian 7 behind, Natasha knew that home was no longer a place. It was the three of them together, a family born from impossible circumstances, proof that love could bloom between the stars and that trust could bridge any distance. The knock on her door had brought her an unexpected gift, a blue alien baby and the man who trusted her with everything he held dear. And in return, she had given him her heart, freely and without reservation. Their journey was just beginning, filled with challenges and wonders yet to come. But whatever awaited them, they would face it together, a human and an alien bound by love, raising a child who represented the best of both their worlds. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, but they had found the greatest one of all. That connection and compassion knew no boundaries, and that family was defined not by blood or species, but by the choices made in moments that mattered most.